All right, for the first several weeks of this course, we will be literary critics. We will be reading a couple poems, we'll be talking about literature, and then we will be moving into the main piece of literature we will analyze this semester, which is the novel The Kite Runner. So probably the first question that comes to mind is, why are we spending time in this class messing around with this? Aren't we supposed to learn to be better writers? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last English course you're likely to take. Unless you are going to be an English major, this will be your last class. And there is a definite reason why this part of the course exists. And it is to help you see and understand the way literature and thinking and writing and all of those things are connected. And this next slide, the question on the top of it is one, unfortunately, I hear all the time. I hear it from many students, and it kind of hurts my heart a little bit, but I'll address it very briefly. And that question is, why do we have to read, Mrs. Angel? We already have to read things in other classes. We have to read boring textbooks. We have to, read things that we don't want to read. Why is it so important for us to be exposed to literature? And the reason for that, there's a lot of different reasons, but I will just very simply say, I'll sound like your mother right now and say literature is important. Just like vegetables are important for you and all different kinds of vitamins and nutrients, reading is an important element. And it's an important element for a couple different reasons. First of all, very obviously, if you read well, if you continue to read and expose yourself to good writers, you yourself will become a better writer. Why? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's as simple as, how do we learn to do anything? We watch it and then we imitate it. A lot of times this is the best way to learn how to do something. If you read and experience good writers, you are very likely to imitate those writers. So more reading equals better writing. Also, literature, quite frankly, can inform and enlighten us. And this might seem silly to you, but this was actually why, as a little kid, I decided that I would pursue this line of work, even though now perhaps my view has shifted more to the writing end. When I was a child, I loved to read. I still love to read. And what I loved most about it was the fact that I could experience and become involved with places and people and just all kinds of things that I would never have an opportunity to. I've never moved out of Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen. I may have traveled a little bit when the military was involved in my life, but for the most part, I've lived a very sheltered life. However, I've experienced all kinds of things through the novels that I've read and through the different things that I've read. So it's certainly a reason to read, is read as much as you can, many different things to experience these things. One thing to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, is there is definitely a difference between sitting down to read a novel and what we will do this semester. I read very much, sometimes 2 novels a week, sometimes more if I'm on break and don't really have much going on. And during that time, I passively read, meaning I don't really pay too awful much attention unless it's a great book and it grips me. It's more to kind of, decompress me and make me relaxed. In this class, we will actively and critically read. We will read and we will consider and we will determine what our thoughts are about what we are experiencing. And that's really kind of the essence of literary criticism. So literary criticism has a very standard definition, and this shouldn't surprise you too awful much. It's the art or the practice of judging and commenting on the qualities and character of literary works. In other words, you're reading and you're talking about it. Simplistic? Maybe. So how are we going to do this? What makes us qualified to do it? Well, honestly, as a human being with human emotion and human capabilities and understandings, you are already qualified, okay? And in order for us all to come at this, though, in the same kind of mindset, We have to consider certain clear and universal standards that will help us analyze literature. And this is all what your reading's about in our textbook. There are four main properties that are introduced, and you'll see I have them in parentheses here for you to look at. These four main properties are introduced to you to help you kind of apply those to pieces of literature. Okay, and we're talking about the fact that the work says something about real life. It is complex, yet unified. It shows a wholesome view of life, is original, and captures an important subject. Those are the four things that your novel brings up. Your novel, excuse me, that your textbook brings up. And we will discuss those, and we'll talk about whether or not you believe that those are accurate and useful ways to determine the relevance of a piece of literature, but they are certainly a good starting point. Another thing we want to consider as we are starting this literary criticism is that we must consider what the author's intention or intentions are and whether those intentions are successful. Okay? Everyone, when they sit down to write, has an intention. They have a reason for writing about what they're writing about. Okay? And it may be as simplistic as to entertain us. It may be to enlighten us or to persuade us. But we should always have in our minds what is that author's intention and is that author successful with those intentions. The last one I think is extremely important, and that is we must use a basic understanding of historical, social, and cultural ideologies to frame our analysis. Guys, don't be alarmed by the word ideology, just basically schools of thought, trains of thinking. We need to be aware of all of these aspects. When did the writer write the work? Okay? What is the setting of the work, and how does that in any way shape our understanding of it? And in history, when did this take place, and what does that say? This is extremely important with the Kite Runner, and we will spend time talking about Afghanistan and talking about Afghanistan history as well. Okay, so this is kind of the first thing for you to kind of keep in mind as you're looking at a text. If you know you're reading the Kite Runner, one of the first things that you'll do is you'll kind of figure out, okay, well, I know I'm reading the Kite Runner. It begins in Afghanistan in the late 1970s and spans right up to 2001. That's a very tumultuous time in Afghanistan's history, and so you need to be aware of the happenings and how that would have affected the overall content of the novel. And this will help you really have more of an understanding as far as the novel goes. So how do you do this? Many students say to me, I'm not a literary critic. I've never really done this before, and it makes me nervous to try. One of the beautiful things about English, ladies and gentlemen, is it's just you and a book and your internal dialogue with that book. Okay? And in order to have a dialogue, though, you have to have the appropriate vocabulary to have that dialogue. And most of these things are extremely basic. They are things that you already are pretty aware of, but I'm going to bring them back from high school and maybe even some beginning college classes. The best way to do that is to review the vocabulary sheet I provided in the content. You'll notice that there are several different types of literary terms or literary criticism terms that you should be aware of, okay? So you should start there. And as you're starting and you're reviewing that, try to apply those terms to what you're reading, all right? For example, the point of view. You should always try to figure out what the point of view of the character or the narrator's voice is in the novel, okay? And we'll talk about that in the Kite Runner, as well as direct and indirect characterization, irony, setting, plot, and theme, and any others that you may find a little bit interesting as they apply to what we're reading. And this is probably the best way to kind of put yourself in the correct mindset. Finally, you need to have an internal dialogue. And this is not something complicated. And I guarantee you with The Kite Runner, this will be extremely easy. The Kite Runner is a book that will evoke emotion in you. And your internal dialogue is very simply you responding to what you're reading and you understanding what the characters are going through and what it makes you feel. And if you feel that, that something is transpiring that is progressing through the novel, it's just you talking to the characters and becoming immersed in their lives. So what is going to be the culmination activity of this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it shouldn't surprise you. There's going to be two. The first one, of course, is going to be your group assignment where you're going to be really kind of focusing on a specific aspect of Afghanistan culture. The other is your literary analysis essay. And this will be the first essay you write for me. It's going to be 3 to 5 pages, probably closer to 5, I would think. Okay, and it is probably going to have about 3 to 5 sources as well. And you certainly should not go any over 5 sources. That would be too much, I believe. Your subject is going to be The Kite Runner or another approved author or work. Listen, if you have a favorite author and you're all hog wild to do that, that's fine. I would really primarily suggest you focus on The Kite Runner because that's what we're focusing on, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to be a lot easier for you. Okay? What is the content? So you are going to explore some aspect of the work. And guys, I cannot tell you what you should write about, but I will say this, okay? A lot of times it might be easier for you to look around and see what others are saying about The Kite Runner and kind of maybe gauge it as a response to that, okay? Another thing to think about are just some overall things we'll discuss in class, whether we discuss how the protagonist develops throughout the novel. You could certainly do that. One thing I would like to point out is a thesis is not something like, this is a good novel. The Kite Runner is a good novel because da da da. No, it's got to be more in depth than that. You've got to tell us something about The Kite Runner. I've had students that did compare and contrast in the movie and the book. That's an acceptable topic. Maybe one's better than the other. Maybe one really kind of captures things that you believe are important. It's going to be up to you. But this part of the course, I dare say, is supposed to be interesting to you, and it's also supposed to kind of be fun to you. Why? Well, because you're reading a really excellent book and you're writing a paper about it. To me, that's fun. I know, I'm weird. But I would like to say that as we go through, become more comfortable voicing your thoughts and just kind of letting your thoughts take you. And be sure, guys, you're reviewing that vocabulary sheet and you're keeping up with the reading, and we will get you to where you need to be excellent literary critics. Thank you.